Hello, everybody. I am here, and I don't know how long that was streaming for there because I didn't have a picture there, and then I had to get my coffee, and you know, and these are relatively hard times right now, right? Not even relatively. These are hard times. Yeah, because they said, the end of times is going to be the worst, right? It's going to be the worst. And in the Bible, we've heard a lot of bad things, but not like Armageddon. So why not start with the wacky talk? Uh-oh. I'm not recording. So no evidence of the wacky talk. I can edit that out. Whatever. I wasn't recording on my end. YouTube got all of it. You'll get it all. I know. You're like, what did she say when the volume was off? What did she say? And most of this stuff is coming to me in hindsight. So the person who was trying to get me to say communist ideology or whatever, when I was over there at Main Street, I'm just being very specific, Mark, or whoever you really are, or connected to, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because if that, we all have opportunities, and that was your opportunity. And Mark may be your real name, but you didn't give me your whole name, and you know it, and you know what you came there for, and you know what you walked away with. So I actually was praying pretty, I don't want to say pretty hard because, oh, that's not what we're looking at. I forgot to put that up there. Because luckily, I have seen recently much more than ever before, God's hand in everything. And so my prayers don't have to be so hard. Like they weren't so hard and just backbreaking, really, in a way. Like that's the word that came in, so tearful and sobbing. I don't seem to cry like that anymore. And I do think that it's because God is keeping his promise about collecting my tears now, and that there are no more, tears in heaven. And I think he is keeping his promise for me. I think it's a journey, and time is different for everybody else. And so what we all believe in is his great plan. That's what we all believe in. And why we're all here is because we gave God the big middle finger to his plan. And so but that doesn't mean that we are all suffering in ways that are punishing. We're all suffering in ways that are in service of us getting back to him. So that was a mouthful. And so that I was not prepared to say. So I'll just jump on to the next thought right now, which is that in this plan, and it's not jumping, it's actually, so in this plan, we all want control. That is, why did we turn our backs? Why are we here? We had to learn a lesson, and the lesson makes us warriors. That I know. When we learn the lesson, when we're done here, getting rid of the waste, and that's what we're doing right now. We're getting rid of the waste right now. And it doesn't mean that we're getting rid of God's creation. We're getting rid of the waste. And that's a part of me, and it's a part of you, and it's a part of every one of us. We all have waste. And I'm going to be talking more about, specifics in the next classroom, in the philosophical classroom, about, that concept. So we'll see how much I get to it. which is basically, I'm going to say it right now, so it's in my head and whatever, is the twin studies that have been done in. So I'm going to talk about a couple things in the upcoming philosophical classroom. So Robbers Cave seems like it is, I don't know. The worst of the worst studies have been the twin studies. So I don't know. Is it a twin study? You know that there are sexual deviants who are also studying people, numerous sexual deviants who are studying people in psychology. I suggest that this has to do with witchcraft. I'm suggesting that. I don't, because of the chanting, I don't know about that part of it. Musafer Sharif, maybe, an Eastern background, certainly has a mystical background to it. Psychologists were doing twin studies at the time, and these twin studies were done in Finland. And so many of them, it was the Finland twin study. So if you wanted to do an investigation or a deeper dive on something, certainly take a look at that. And if that interests you, if twin studies interest you, that would really be a good place to look. I would suggest, this thought just came into my head, which is, were they pairing them with twins? In these experiments where they were mixing up everyone's DNA, it appears, of the poor people, it appears, to try and keep a super race pure. It appears to me that was the great experiment here in the United States. That's what it appears to me. I say this in our mysteries, in my mystery series, and I'm folding some of the mysteries into this because it is, my mystery series have been personal questions that I knew were bigger questions, and now are appearing to be some of the biggest questions, right? Some of the biggest questions that I've been able to sort of have knowledge and background in about the scientific study, in particular of this nature versus nurture thing. But more spiritually speaking, what we're talking about is God's plan. And if you have faith in God's plan, right? So what I'm saying is God's plan has to do with why we're here on this planet, which is basically we have got to demonstrate God's existence. I suppose in the most simplest terms, he gave it to his people, us, this kind of people, in order to demonstrate that he exists. His angels are likely there to help us in that demonstration, but it seems to me that we are here on this planet to save it from the fear and doubt that we would have if we believe that we don't have a creator, if we believe that we were simply products of, amoeba, parasites, animals, all of those things. So this is the great scientific experiment, which is fine because, in some ways it seemed very distasteful, didn't it? That God was experimenting on his creation, or that we were his experiment. But put it that way, and it does feel bland, cold, ugly, right? Put it that way, and it feels cold, ugly, removed, right? That cannot be a God of love. But if God were showing me in this process, he were showing me that I did have the faith to move mountains, and it was only because I didn't believe it that I couldn't. And that was what he was showing me. And the way that he had to show me was to build it up in these small increments. And then see, in this refinement, I'm talking about in the critical thinking class. And then see, how we begin to master the idea of faith. But there is always going to be a part of us, the waste part of us, that doesn't get it. It doesn't amount to people, it amounts to behaviors. So if you were to say, oh my gosh, for example, if you were to say, oh my gosh, I think I know my twin. And I think I'm the better of the two, which, by the way, part of this really is, ladies, flowers in the attic. Part of this is flowers in the attic. It is unbelievable how literature has been explaining what has been going on to help us read between the lines right now in this day and age. We're not getting, literature is not on the internet. It's not on the internet. Unless you search for literature and actually get the book. I'm not saying there aren't books available, but literature basically is available through books. And all of these books, because in many ways it's my time for the blinds to fall off of my eyes, right? To have the cataracts fall or whatever, right? That would be falling away. It's my time in this time. You may have had them, and many of you have had your cataracts fall away previous in time, in my time, right? Some of you, it is to come in my time. I believe that many of you, most of you, have had your cataracts fall off before me, and which is good, which is fine. And the reason is because I had to stay here, because I am Mother Earth. I'm something. I'm not just Mother. No, I'm Holy Spirit. I'm passion. I'm those things. I just am. I just am. And this is all about his plan of, purifying us. This is all about purifying us. And each one of us, we are purifying as an individual. We are purifying ourselves. I am here to help in the purification of my sons, of my husband, of my sisters, as they are helping me in my purification. They know more than I do in some areas and less than I do in others. I don't know if their time is always matched with my time. I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt it. I think they know some things I don't know, but the things they do know that I know are the parts of them that are traveling with me. All this to say that we have no real hand in the way that God has decided to unfold the plan for us, right? We have no, I did not know in my conscious lifetime, right? So that's the difference right there, right? The subconscious, unconscious, all kinds of spiritual stuff can be going on there, and we could maybe are a part of it to some extent. I don't know to what extent, but I have a history in my consciousness, right? I have a history in my consciousness. And so so all I'm saying is your time I don't know if your consciousness is always matched with mine as I travel through my journey. I doubt it. I don't think so. But all of it is a plan to get us all back together, to get us all unified once again, because that is the way that God works. God works in unity. His creation has to be in unity. So there are things that, all right, so I'm going to talk in people terms now, all right? So there are things that occur in our lifetime that, for example, for me, I feel I should have known better, right? For all of us, we all have that, but here's the thing about me that I think is unique to me. And some of you are in this whatever, and some of you are not. And that is because it's part of my personality. I try to prepare for everything, right? I try to prepare for everything that would happen to my family that would come as an attack to my family. And so and in doing that, I got a degree in psychology and in social psychology. I have always been a learner, right? A student of religion, of theology. I have always said if my degree wasn't in psychology, it would be in theology. So here, as distasteful as this sounds to some people, but other people get it, I covered my bases. So things might happen to you and your family, but they're not going to happen to mine. I'm not a one percenter when it comes to money, but I am a one percenter when it comes to intellect. That I'm sure of. I mean, I have a PhD, so just right there, and the way that I have used my mind throughout my lifetime, even doing this right now for you, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm a one percenter intellectually. So intellectually, I had this base covered, but I didn't. But I didn't. Now, here's the thing about that. The more faith that we have that this is God's plan and He's got us, the more quickly we can bounce back from things. Now, that becomes very distasteful for other people, right? The fact that I was able to bounce back from the death of my husband in emotional ways by very often looking at the positive, which had to do with where we were in our relationship, which a lot of people are after being together for 30, 35 years, right? A lot of people are at different places in their relationship. It doesn't, we are likely, we know we're not the same place we were in the first 2 years of our relationship because it's 35 years later, right? So none of us are in those first stages 35 years later. So certainly I could have perspective on it that might seem distasteful to other people. And especially if I put it in the hands of God to help me get through that, right? So I'm bouncing back much more quickly than some people think that I should be. Well, that's not in my hands. Would you like me to pretend? I know some of you are shaking your head yes, right? Some family members are shaking their head yes. Some of you are saying, yes, I would like you to suffer a little bit more, handle it a little bit differently. It would be. No, I'm about truth. That you need to be about your truth. Mind your own business about my truth. Mind your own business about my truth, unless my truth somehow is really a detriment to you, right? My opinion should not be a detriment, right? We were reading from True Believer. I read that quote, thought number 10 in the True Believer by Eric Hoffer. This minding of other people's business expresses itself in gossip, snooping, and meddling, and also in feverish interest in communal, national, and racial affairs. In running away from ourselves, we either fall on our neighbor's shoulder or fly at his throat, right? So I do have responsibility when this is a true detriment to you. But if it's a detriment to you in your own mind, that's a whole different story, right? So let me get back to, so I thought I had all the bases covered, right? I thought with my kids and my family, I had the bases covered. And so two things, I was divorced, right? So I didn't end up having the successful family that I always wanted and thought I would have and invested in, even with the balance in my life that I wanted to have a certain balance in my life. And that balance had to do with work and raising my boys. I thought I was going to be an example to my boys about femininity in the workplace, right? That a woman can still be feminine and womanly and take on a role that's important, right? And that is and I wanted to give them that example so that the women that they married would also, be examples of the same kind of thing, where you were nurturing and feminine for your children and for your family, but you were wise and could make decisions, and you could, move mountains. And you could move mountains. We all want to move mountains. I don't think that God was speaking literally, right? I think really God was speaking figuratively. We have no need to move a literal mountain, but we all have a great, great need to move figurative mountains, right? Mountains in our minds, the obstacles that we think that we cannot overcome. And so this is what we are learning here on this planet, which is where I believe heaven is as well, which is why, I couldn't imagine leaving this gift that God gave me, or even destroying it, or denying that it's being destroyed, just out of plain, defensiveness is what it is. Out of defensiveness, that you don't want to believe that this planet is being destroyed. But you do have to look at the facts. And so in the end, it's a personal journey. In the end, it's a personal journey where we have to have discernment. As spiritual beings, we have to use discernment. And that's what I'm teaching in my critical thinking class, and at a different level in my philosophical class as well, in the philosophical classroom as well. I want to give you a little bit more of a bite, because we're going to go into a little bit more. I brought this up yesterday, and we didn't get to the philosophical classroom yesterday because we only do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I actually do really like that choice a lot. It gave me a chance to bring some of these important things from this Robbers Cave study to your attention. And also then, I said I was going to read more and come back more. No, I left it with the videos, is what I left it with. Let me finish this thought first of all. So the lesson that I had to learn was that this is not in my hands. That I am here to protect my marriage and my family. And in my family, I have a relationship with my spouse, my marriage, and I have a relationship with my children. And that creates two different types of dynamics in the family. I failed in the marriage by traditional standards, right? I was divorced, so I failed in the marriage by traditional standards. And as far as my boys feel, there were certain, and I know that there were certain ways I could not protect them. I thought I had all the bases covered to protect them. In the end, I clearly realized that I could not. And I'm even thinking now, and neither could my sisters and neither could my cousins protect their children like we all, likely all of us really, really wanted to. And so, so from my perspective, I worked very, very diligently to make sure that I wasn't making mistakes. The burden of mistakes on me, it may not be the same for everybody. The burden of mistakes on me they were so great. If I did the smallest thing, if I was late, I was thinking recently when I was late carpooling and picking up the kids, or I thought I told her something, I don't know, it was a mix up, and I had, somehow gotten the message, she didn't get the message, whatever it was a mix up is all it was. It was an honest mix up. And I felt so bad for almost a week. I felt bad that this was the nicest person. She was carpooling with me. She looked into, my background and everything. She was just so concerned. And here I was, and this was also the time where I was going through my divorce. So things weren't, or close to it. I wasn't actually quite going through it yet, I don't think. But things weren't going well, right? So things weren't going well. So there were things that I was so stressed about, right? So for me, as for maybe many of you, the guilt of making a mistake just was a burden so difficult for me to bear that I really, really worked hard to not make any mistakes. And so some people, they don't do that, right? They don't work hard. Some people rebel and they go the exact opposite direction, right? I wasn't that person. I was really, I really, there were things I wanted to do to have fun because I was a clown. I was a little bit of a class clown. So I always wanted to make sure I was having fun. But there were rules that, and I broke lots of small rules. I remember my mom said, "You always got caught at everything." Well, I was like, "No, I didn't." But okay, I'm glad you thought I did, right? Because I got caught a lot at things. And so it wasn't the punishment, which I talk about I think in did we talk about that in this classroom? Or the philosophical classroom, I think. So the punishment, it wasn't about the punishment for me, right? It was about the feelings. And often that's what it is, right? That's what we were talking about, I think, in the philosophical classroom, where we have that laid out. Or was it in this classroom? Where we have it laid out about the different rewards. Maybe it was in this classroom. I'm not sure. I could pull it up, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now because you can go back and take a look at that. But it's basically taking a look at the rewards that we have and being invested in the rewards or punishments. The punishments and reward, the things that were punishments for me, my mom said you got caught all the time. No, I didn't. Why? Why? Because those were short-term behavior changes, only when she was looking. Why? Because the drive to do some fun things were greater, but never to do things that were really breaking the rules, to a great extent. It just, I break some rules. I think that they're little rules, but maybe we all feel that same way. The point here is this, is that I learned that I really, really wanted to control some things. And what I wanted to control was the outcome of my happiness, which I believed was dependent on my marriage and my relationship with my children. And although it is to a great degree, if I am a person of faith, what I know is that God put in my hands people that I want to have faith. So why would he wreck my faith by not giving me people in my life that will have faith? But every faith journey is their own. What I have to do is I have to sit back and realize that not everything is in my control. So lots of things are, though, right? I got a PhD, so there are lots of things that I can control. But it's clear there are lots of things I can't control. It's why I have almost 20 episodes on a mystery series, right? Because there are plenty of things that I can't control. But the bottom line is, which I talk about as well, the great experiment in the Bookless classroom, I even talk about that, or critical thinking, the great experiment. In the great experiment, guess what I have? Faith. Now, and that can move mountains. My faith can move mountains. There were things that happened that I know I thought I could and couldn't protect my boys. There were likely things that my husband couldn't protect my boys from. There were things I couldn't protect my marriage from, right? But if I have faith, I can believe that is all in God's hands, and it will work for the good for those who love and are part of his plan, who love God and are part of his plan. And time and time and time again, impress that on your mind so that you realize that God is not a hands-off God. He is getting in your journey a way back to him. Now, there are people that I see in my life right now that are really making, as I said, I have almost 20 episodes of a mystery series. So they're really making my life miserable and hard. And in fact, I'm really quite sure that they're trying to frame me as a communist. And I don't even mean small powers. I mean big powers. When I just mentioned Mark, that's what the information Mark was getting. That's what he was sitting down getting. He was trying to get some information and be able to splice together video and audio of me. And that's some pretty big powers that want to do that to me. That's some pretty big powers. Who would the powers be? The medical community. Why? Because I am smart and I'm saying something. They've done it to other people. I'm not the only one they've done it to, right? But right now, if they could have kept me quiet and right, I'm a woman, I'm a minority, right? I'm a mother. If they could have kept me quiet, they figured I was an easy person to keep quiet. And all of a sudden now, they know there's a lot more people listening to me than what those numbers show. They know that. They know that because they absolutely know because they're collecting all the data on it, right? I see every place I go. People see me. People notice me. Every place I go. So, okay, numbers don't look like that, but whatever. So what's the big deal about me? Well, what the big deal about me is what I'm saying. So I left you with the videos. I went and looked at the videos, and I think that there's some information out there that they're getting from Black Mirror or from Stranger Things or from Netflix or from whatever about all of these. And you're doing deep dives, is what you're doing, on all of these psychological experiments and trying to implicate me in my memory, right? So thinking that if you put visuals in my memory, that is going to somehow create a memory of what? I don't know, saluting Hitler? I don't even know. What do you think you're going to create a memory of that you're going to be able to use against me in the court of law, you ding-dongs? It's not that I'm not saying that it couldn't be there. The science can't be there. I'm just saying there is, some artful humanity around here as well. Everything is not science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? Just as I have been saying. So what the videos have on them? Nothing, right? Nothing. They didn't have anything other than, there was, Young was talking for a couple hours about, his dream analysis, and I found him to be mystical and a little boring. And so, yeah, a little boring. And then there was the Hitler video, which I don't think was the right Hitler video. It said Hitler PBS on there. I don't think that was a PBS. It didn't look like it. And then there was another one on psychedelic drugs, but it was on marijuana specifically. Okay, so it is categorized as a psychedelic. I understand that. But all they had were people who had titles that were reading script. And this was from, the 1970s or something like that, likely the 1970s, that were reading script. So they didn't know enough about it. So that was really, all of it was very boring, very, very mundane. Didn't create any memories at all about, Hitler, communism, violent behaviors. The one thing that was interesting was that they were doing experiments on people relative to their sugar levels, and knowing that their low sugar levels created this, really irate behavior, which I've seen before in other women that I've known and their husbands, right? So low sugar will create this erratic behavior. And I wonder if something doesn't occur because I don't know if I've said this or not, if I've said it to the class, but and I don't know because I didn't say it in the mysteries, but I know that on the night that I got my DUI, now in retrospect, I know that I was drugged. And I wonder, and I know what they were doing. They were looking at the same effects that I know somebody else now I figured out that I was drugged, and it's got to be in the health reports, in the medical reports. I know it is. I know that the judge didn't say anything in the first time I saw him, didn't say anything about a drug test, but he did say it the second time, which meant he was focusing on the alcohol in my system, not on the drugs. The second time it was focused on THC in my system. Why didn't you mention that the first time? Because you didn't want me to know that you actually did the drug test. And of course you did a drug test. And why didn't you want me to know that you did a drug test? Because there were other drugs in my system that you couldn't demonstrate why they would be in my system. Okay, but then I realized that there were other people who had the same story of had a drink and erratic behavior. My behavior wasn't erratic, although it was more erratic than for me. And plus, I realized I did not have that much to drink. As people said I did after the fact. One person said I did. I clearly remember I clearly remember who I was sitting with. I clearly remember how many drinks I had. I remember the last drink, and then I left. So, and I remember the space of time that I had those drinks in. The time that I became blank about what happened was after I was there for at least 2 to 3 hours in the police department. And that's when I have a loss of memory for that period of time. And that's when they took me to the hospital and then they drew blood. So this is what's been happening to me. But what I realized about this was that this also happened to at least 3 other people that I know in this downtown area that I live in. So being drugged. And I'm pretty sure it happened to me the other day as well. But I don't react in the same way that they expect people to react. And God watches out for me. So and I know Charlie, who you are. I know who you are. I do. So I'm just waiting for all this to get wrapped up because I know who you are. And I just find that and Paul at church, I know who you are. And I know that you two are related. So I know who you are. And if you are messing with my sister, Paul, if you're messing with my sister, I don't think that's wise. I don't think that's wise. Because you're on the wrong side. And this is a church matter. I'm talking about church people. I'm talking about church people. I'm talking about people who are big in the church locally. And like I said, and also police officers as well. So all these people are trying to pull strings and control things. And so the point here that I'm making is this, is that he's got it in his hands. That there can be pressures coming from all sides. And if you know, including death, including isolation, including loneliness and despair, you cannot be putting those things in the hands of the medical community. They really are the drain on our system, and I'm going to use stronger words in that. They are the vampires. They are draining us of our life blood, literally filling us with parasites, viruses, poisons, chemicals. It's what they are doing to us. We know it's what they're doing to us, but we can feel a sense of powerlessness, or we can have a sense of faith that what this is doing for us is it is creating warriors. If you take a look out of us, if you take a look at my critical thinking classroom, I'm talking about true grit. Watch God's hand in creating a warrior out of you. Now, there's one more thing I want to say, because I haven't given you the bait from my philosophical classroom. So I said that before I get to the slide that I want to talk to, which actually I only have 15 minutes to talk about, right? Okay, so, and then we're going to be in our philosophical classroom in a half an hour after that. So to give you guys a little bait about it. So I was curious about whether or not I would actually have actual footage on that video for Robber's Cave, and it amounted to nothing. Very mundane video, bored me to sleep. One of them did, right to sleep. I'm very interested in who these people are right here, though. That is for sure. I'll find out who these people are. You can bet on that. I couldn't find out if Sharif is dead. I have a feeling he might be dead, but I have a feeling these guys are fake. I could be O.J. Simpson. I have no idea. We know Jack White is, in the music industry. So, and that again, B.J. White. All right. Is that a real person? William Hood, Bill Hood. That sounds like, and they're KKK stuff. They called these children in here the N-word. So they clearly were not. And you could see by the methodology. And I want every one of these people back here indicted as well. Every one of these people indicted. Donald M. Johnson from Michigan State University, an impressive lesson in the design and execution of intergroup research. No, it's not. No, it's not. And why would you say that? It sounds to me like you have a vested interest in saying that, Donald Johnson. Otto Kleinberg. Otto Kleinberg? You mean like Ottoman Empire? Otto? Is that what you mean? Where Sharif was from, who did this so... It's just an abomination of science. It's an abomination of science. It's an abomination of human dignity. It's an abomination of children, of male children, right after Nazi Germany. Gardner Murphy, the Menninger Foundation. So that's a big deal right there, right there. I haven't looked into that name. Somebody do a deep dive or investigation. You have heard that name. I'm quite sure some of you have heard that name. I think it's associated with PBS. I'm not positive. SB Sells, Texas Christian University. Really? Really? Number one, Texas? Really? Discovery Institute? Really? Texas? Not surprised. Not surprised. Stephen Meyer? Not surprised. SB Sells. That's the name. SB Sells. What is that? What is that name? Who is this person? Find an SB Sells from Texas Christian University. And oh, by the way, Stephen Meyer, we can't find anything earlier than college from you. Why not? Where are you from? Are you right around the corner? Stephen Meyer, do you have a communist agenda? Is a modern classic exemplifying the experimental method in social psychology. No, it doesn't. Did you read the book? Did you read the book? Because Kurt Lewin from the 1950s had something way different to say about field theory and field study, and was very meticulous about collecting methods. You are clowns for your own purpose. And how dare you build science on this nonsense? How dare you build science on this nonsense? I am not done with you. Remember also where I got all this from. I got all of this from the library of Lynn Anderson. All of these books, the videos that I had yesterday, all came from the library of Lynn Anderson 30 years ago. Or maybe it was 1998. Yeah. So, no, what, 25 years ago. 25 years ago. I got all this from Lynn Anderson. And don't forget, Lynn Anderson, this is the stuff Lynn Anderson had. I don't know if it's a female or a male. Not sure. All the stuff that Lynn Anderson had, Lynn Anderson was killed in a car wreck, in a freak snowstorm that was not typical of that time, although we typically had snowstorms in April, right? So, but it came up, got killed in a car accident. I ended up with the choice of all of Anderson's books. And this was part of it. So Lynn Anderson, Robber's Cave, interesting too, the binding and everything that you've got here. Interesting type, like on an old-fashioned typewriter, right? If it's a really good classic book, I don't mind. I wouldn't highlight in it, but this is a piece of crap. So, okay, Ralph H. Turner from the University of California is unusual for its effective combinations of experimental methods in a real-life situation with a successful test of important hypotheses. No, he didn't. He didn't even measure their social personality. Where are those measures? So, okay, so I've talked a lot about this in the spiritual classroom. I've given you lots of reasons why I've talked about it in the spiritual classroom. And now I'm giving you the bait for the philosophical classroom, and I haven't even gotten to the material necessarily for here. Because I finally got to the bait. So I came across this, which I came across and I pulled out a while ago, and now all of a sudden, so, God works in mysterious ways. And so now all of a sudden it is coming to the forefront of all of this that I'm doing, mysteries and everything. And what is this? So here you've got a report. So you can see how it's bound, right? So this is a report. You can see how it's bound. It is communist interrogation, indoctrination, and exploitation of American military and civilian prisoners, which can be a very misleading title there. This is Congress that is meeting, that are hearings on investigating the methods that were used by the Communist Party during World War II. So I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to read from you the introduction here at in our philosophical classroom. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so I'm going to read the introduction. I just picked it up right before this class. So this, I picked it up, 20 minutes before I did this class. I saw it there, and when I started reading it, I was like, holy smokes. Holy smokes. So here's the thing. Again, we have to believe, and I'm saying these are coincidences that can be explained, not because they're just coincidences, but not all coincidences are divine. I'm not saying that God dropped this from the sky, that this is divine intervention, that I pulled it off the shelf, but certainly timing of things certainly are. Certainly timing of things seems to be more in God's hands. Things that I feel like that I have found out, and I don't even know for sure everything, because, it's whatever, of ways that I didn't protect my marriage, or ways that I didn't protect my sons that I thought that I did, right? Again, believing that the big plan, God works through people. God works through people. So how are his plans going to come through to fruition? How are they going to come true? Through people. So somebody could have, but how did they plan 25 years ago? The books I would pick out. How did they plan? I would pull this off the shelf and make sure I didn't forget that I had this within the last 3 months. How did they know I would pick it up before this? So it's a timing thing. It's a timing thing that seems to be God's. Because remember what I said, timing is unique to humans. Nobody else understands time like humans. We make calendars about time. We have watches. We have jewelry. But dogs don't understand time. Birds don't understand time. The past don't understand time. Spirits don't. I mean, they don't have to know time, right? God is beginning and the end. So time is unique to people. So I believe that is God's plan. That in His time, He's bringing all of His children back to Him, right? And again, like Scripture says, and one day is like 1,000 years, or 1,000 years is like one day to God, right? It doesn't even matter. Time does not matter to God. So what's taking, a lifetime for me is 57 years so far to begin to see Him in ways that I feel like they are, the scales are falling off of my eyes, right? It didn't take 4,000 years. It didn't take 4,000 years. Even though historically it looks like it took 4,000 years, for me, it took 57 or 58 or whatever it's going to be, right? I think it's 57 years. It took me 57 years, right? I needed 4,000 years of history, but I didn't need to be in slavery 400 years ago. And the people in slavery lived a period of time, right? Egyptians, right? So Israelites that were in slavery, they lived a period of time is what they did. So they knew of history, right? They could speculate about the future, but as far as their window of time, it was what? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Moses' time, they had to set, right, the foundation for things. So what did he die? I'm not sure. 800 years for before Noah's time, I don't know. To set the foundation, it seems to me, right, for this great plan that we have to take our parts in. And I'll get to the broaden and build when we come back on Tuesday then, because that actually is telling you then, how can we really take our part then? What can we do to take our part? If this is in God's hands, how can we take our part? I always said, why can't we know your plan? Well, I figured it out, because if I knew His plan, for example, let's say that my son was addicted to drugs. Let's say that, okay? And so let's say that I knew that in, December of 2027, he would no longer be addicted. What would I do between now and 2027 for him? Nothing, because I knew by December 2027 he'd be cured. So what would I do? Nothing. No, God needs His soldiers. I needed to be the mother, or I would have had in that situation, to be the mother to save him, to do the things that would ensure he would be, free, drug free, December of 2027, right? So that's why we can't know all of these things in the future. We are his soldiers. We would not take the steps to take care of business. Like I'm taking the steps to take care of business, right? We wouldn't do that. Okay, that's all that I have because I want to take my 30-minute. Oh, it's 124. You know what? That's all that I have. That was the bait. I don't, because what I would get into right next would be our broaden and build. So the idea with the broaden and build is that they are steps we can learn and we can take in order to overcome, in order to make sure we don't learn helplessness, to keep our optimism levels high, to make sure that we have hope in things, to make sure that we are engaged in life, that we are listening and interested and growing and refining, right? All of those things we want to make sure that we're doing to get through our journey, as unscathed as possible, right? As undamaged as possible, with the least amount of hurts and scars as possible, of course. Okay, so this is Dr. Annette Feravich, and we are here in the spiritual classroom. I will get to the broaden and build, but I do feel like, God was really telling me to tell you about, and especially in these times, that you will not be able to predict things. You will not be able to control things. What you have to do is you have to put your head down. You have to do your part. You have to make sure, like Eric Hoffer says, that you have enough interest in who you are in your own journey, so that you are not, busybodying yourself with other people's journeys in negative ways. I have enough to take care of with my family, and pray and hope that they have, successful journeys, and that their pain and their hurt and their damage is the least possible. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, but there are steps we can take. So we will get to the broaden and build on Tuesday. I will see you on Tuesday. This is Dr. Annette Feravich with the Spiritual Classroom, and I am the teacher. Thanks for joining me.